White Noise Metal
with that BS dude, Brian Shields.
Welcome to White Noise Metal. I'm that BS dude, Brian Shields. We're here in North Carolina with Cynic. And as I was just saying, I saw you guys a couple weeks ago in San Francisco, was completely blown away by your approach, by the music, by the lyrics, by, you know, when was the last time you went to a metal show and you saw the crowd doing yoga moves between songs? You know, I mean, it's really great stuff. I bought the record and I've been listening to it pretty much nonstop ever since. So I really wanted to welcome you to White Noise Metal.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So can you talk to me a little bit to begin with about kind of your approach when you do songwriting? What's the process like?
I'm kind of a folky. I generally, all the songs start on acoustic guitar and with a strong chord changes and good melody, you know, and that's the foundation of Traced in Air, really, was the first wave of demos for the album were literally guitar or piano vocal demos, and then from there it turned into the other layers, counterparts, rhythmic ideas, kind of production. You know, there was actually 4 demos total for the album that we did in terms of how we layered and created the record. But yeah, at the root of it, I'm really just interested in a great song, and it's always about subtraction to kind of get to that. You know, it's the core of a really, almost like an effective poem. You just want to say as much as you can with as little as possible. And it's tricky to do that in the world of progressive music because it tends to do the opposite, where you're more indulgent. But we've always kind of do it in a more kind of concentrated way versus the other extreme, which is extended, and, you know, it's more about trying to keep it simple, really, but engaging in what we do naturally as musicians stylistically.
And so it starts with you on the acoustic guitar, and then you bring the rest of the band in?
Yeah, well, it's usually I just do a bunch of demos at home, and I give those demos to my drummer to start usually, and he comes over and he learns the arrangements, and then we flush out the rhythmic grooves, like, oh, let's push this section, let's try this, you know, odd meter, let's you know, maybe swing this section, let's try and do a different feel here. And so he plays a big part in that, because he's really just a rhythm guy. He's a drummer's drummer, and so he gets into kind of almost turning it inside out on a rhythmic level, and I play with that, you know, and we find a balance where it still keeps the integrity of the melody, you know, and kind of the feeling intact, but at the same time making it more interesting and dynamic. And then from there, I'll introduce it to the other musicians, and we'll get into counter guitar parts, you know, layering ideas and kind of the grooves, you know, just the real specific kind of micro groove level of the songs beyond just this. I mean, but to me, again, it's like that once that foundation is laid, you're golden. You can kind of go anywhere and do no wrong. And so it's usually, as long as I've got a really solid melody and a solid harmony, you know, good chord structure, I feel like we're cool, you know, we can kind of do whatever we want, and it's fun at that point, you know.
I mean, there's a real jazz sense, in both in terms of the drumming and in terms of the bass playing, I think. How improvisational is what you do?
I think there's the improvisational aspects come once the foundation's been laid, when we start playing it, you know, and really feeling it in a room. And then we ride on the moment and try and kind of see what kind of arises as a result of kind of playing out the arrangement, and then you tend to stumble upon things which can tend to be really great accidents, and then it's like, no, let's do this. And so there's a lot of that spontaneous aspect but once the stuff's written, it's very kind of through written, like orchestrated, and even the solos, we try and keep everything pretty. But they start out as improvisations, and then it's like, well, let's flesh this out. Let's figure out what this is exactly and fine-tune it. So it's definitely a combination of trusting in the improvisational aspect, but at the same time trying to kind of refine it and be really specific about the language. otherwise. But we have thought about that, and when we do live shows, we tend to explore and do things where we improvise and stuff to have the jazzier side, which is a whole other game, you know.
Well, I was again blown away by the performance aspect of what you guys did in San Francisco. I thought it was really compelling and really drew me in. I want to talk a little bit about some specific songs.
Yeah.
Let's start with Space for This.
Okay. In terms of lyrically, or
lyrically, and in terms of what the approach and what the intent was.
Well, the lyrics were birthed out of. I'm a big fan of a spiritual teacher named Eckhart Tolle, and I met him a few times, and I had seen a lecture of his in L.A. where I live, at an auditorium at UCLA, and that's where the song came from. It was really after I left that kind of, I guess you could say it was just a talk, an informal talk. I had already the tune in my head. It was just there in terms of lyrically.
Spell